Welcome to Fractured Chaos.
They say the most dangerous predators know how to spot the wounded. They can smell vulnerability like sharks sense blood in water, circling, patient, calculating each move. I didn't understand this when I was 17. I only knew what emptiness felt like. An empty fridge with nothing but condiment packets and expired milk. Empty promises from my mother that things would get better after each new boyfriend left. The empty space where a father should have been. Not even a photograph to show what he looked like. And most of all, the empty eyes of my mother as she'd reach for another bottle, another man, another escape that wasn't me. My name is Tasha, and this is the story I never thought I'd live to tell. We lived in the Parkside apartments, though there wasn't a park in sight. Just concrete and chain link fences. Apartment 3C with the leaking ceiling, and the neighbors who fought all night. 2 bedrooms, but my mother's boyfriends often spilled into the living room, where I slept on the pull-out couch. By 17, I'd learned to sleep with headphones on, turned up loud enough that I couldn't hear what happened after the lights went out. School was just a place I went to stay warm sometimes. Nobody noticed when I disappeared for days. Nobody asked about the dark circles under my eyes or why. I wore the same clothes 3 days running. I was invisible, a ghost girl haunting the back row of classrooms, hallways, life. The first time I met Jermaine, I was skipping school, sitting alone outside the corner store on Martin Luther King Boulevard, smoking a cigarette I'd stolen from my mother's purse. He pulled up in a black Cadillac that gleamed like obsidian against the gray neighborhood, music thumping, windows tinted. When he stepped out, he moved like he owned the air around him. He looked at me like I mattered, like I was seen. He was 40, but I didn't care. When you've been invisible your whole life, you'll burn yourself just to stand in someone's light. "You've got old eyes," he told me that day. Beautiful eyes that have seen too much. His voice was honey poured over gravel, smooth but with something rough underneath. He bought me a soda, some candy, asked questions like he actually wanted to hear the answers. Nobody had asked me questions like that before. What I didn't realize was that he'd been watching me for weeks, learning my routines, studying my loneliness. The candy he bought me that day, Reese's peanut butter cups, my favorite, had been picked out long before our chance meeting. He already had the key to my apartment before I ever invited him inside. I found out later he'd been dating one of our neighbors, Miss Crystal from 4B, just to keep an eye on me. She gave him the spare key my mother had left with her. The entire time I thought I was choosing him, he'd already chosen me. The first month with Jermaine was everything I'd dreamed of. My own protector. Someone who touched my face gently, who asked about my day, who made sure I ate. He'd bring me clothes, nicer than anything I'd ever owned. Shoes that weren't from the discount store. Makeup that came in pretty packaging instead of stolen from drugstores. He called me his queen and talked about all the places we'd go someday. My mother barely noticed when I started staying out. Sometimes I'd come home after 3 days away, and the dishes I'd left in the sink were still there, untouched. When Jermaine suggested I move in with him, away from my mother's chaos, it felt like salvation. His apartment was in Westbrook Heights, the nice part of town with actual trees and no gunshots at night. 2 bedrooms with real furniture. A TV bigger than our refrigerator back home. The sheets on his bed were so soft I'd run my hands over them again and again, wondering how anything could feel like that. "You deserve better than this life," he'd say, massaging my shoulders as I soaked in his giant bathtub. "And I know how we can get it." He started small, asked me to be nice to a business associate of his, said the man could help us start our own business someday, said it was just part of how the game worked, said everybody did it who wanted to be somebody. The first night he had me work, I told myself it was just once, just to help with rent, just because we were a team now, just because he loved me. Love, that word. It's amazing how it can be hollowed out, gutted like a fish, and still keep its shape. When I came home crying that first night, he held me, wiped my tears, told me how proud he was, how strong I was, how we were building something together. He ran a bath for me with expensive salts that smelled like lavender, ordered my favorite Chinese food, let me sleep late the next day. 2 nights later, the same thing. Then 3 nights a week. Then every night. Soon, Jermaine's business associates became regular clients, He started taking pictures of me for a special website, started setting rates, taking calls on his 3 different cell phones, making schedules, and the gentle man who'd rescued me began to fade like a dream upon waking. The bruises came later. So did the drugs. Little blue pills, just to help you relax, baby. So did the rules. Don't look men in the eye unless they pay for you. Don't keep tips unless I say so. Don't talk to the other girls about money. Always answer my calls by the second ring. So did the other girls. So did the locked doors. The thing nobody tells you about cages is sometimes they're built so slowly that by the time you notice the bars, you've forgotten how to fly. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere alone anymore. My phone had tracking software. I had a quota to meet each night. When I missed it, there were consequences. Sometimes no food, sometimes worse. When I exceeded it, there were rewards, usually more drugs, occasionally a trip to the mall with him watching every move. The first time I tried to leave him, I was 18. I found out I was pregnant after missing my period for 2 months. When I told him, thinking maybe now things would change, he put his cigarette out on my shoulder, said it was bad for business, said nobody wants to pay for a pregnant girl, said I'd need to take care of it, and pointed to a white pill on the counter. I miscarried 3 days later in the bathroom of a motel while a client waited outside, knocking every few minutes to ask if I was almost done. Jermaine made me work that same night, said I owed him for the money I'd lost. I began to understand then. This wasn't love. This wasn't even business. This was ownership. By 19, I had my first child. A beautiful little girl with my eyes and his smile. I loved her fiercely, completely, and Jermaine knew it. He'd found the perfect leash. I was back working 6 weeks after giving birth. My daughter Zoe became both my reason to live and my chain to Jermaine. He'd dote on her when clients were around. Family man was good for his image with certain people. But when we were alone, she became his favorite tool of control. Family stays together, he'd say, holding my daughter while I got ready for work. You go out there and make sure we can give her everything. You don't want her growing up like you did, do you? 1 child became 2. My son Marcus came when I was 21. Then came twins, Ayana and Andre, just 14 months later. Not all were Jermaine's, but in his mind they all belonged to him. Assets, anchors, reasons I couldn't run. I tried once, when the twins were babies. Got as far as the bus station with Zoe and Marcus. Jermaine found us before the bus arrived. He wasn't even angry. That was the scariest part. Just disappointed, he said. That night, he took Marcus to stay with his sister for a while. I didn't see my son for 6 weeks. When he came back, he wouldn't look me in the eye. He was 3. The other girls in the house called me wifey because I lived with him. Because my children called him daddy. Because I had the nicer clothes and my own room in his house. They thought it was a privilege. They didn't see the deeper cuts, the special rules. How being closest to the spider puts you at the center of the web. By 23, I had 2 more children, Liam and Desiree. 6 kids under the age of 4. Jermaine made sure I had help. One of his retired girls who couldn't work anymore after a client had broken her jaw so badly it never healed right. Tammy. She loved my children. She also reported everything I did to Jermaine. That same year, Marcus started having seizures. The doctors couldn't find a cause. Said he needed medication, special care, regular checkups. Jermaine used this too. You think any shelter's going to take a child with medical needs? You think you can afford these medicines on your own? When I was 23, I met a social worker at the hospital. She saw something in my eyes when Jermaine stepped out to take a call. She slipped me her card while I was in the emergency room for a fall down the stairs. Said she could help. Said there were places we could go, me and my children, places with security, places he couldn't find us. I kept that card hidden in my shoe for 2 years. Jermaine found it during a room search. He went through all our things regularly. Just making sure we're all being honest with each other, baby. That night, He made me watch as he flushed all my son's seizure medication down the toilet. "Now you need me more than ever," he whispered, kissing my forehead while I cried. What he didn't know was that I'd memorized the number on that card. Sometimes at night I'd recite it silently like a prayer, waiting for the day I'd be brave enough or desperate enough to use it. By 25, I had 6 children and a 1,000-yard stare. The drugs didn't even numb me anymore. They just kept me functioning. Clients, home, children, clients, home, children. A hamster wheel spinning toward nowhere. My days blurred together in a haze of diapers and darkness. Jermaine had expanded his business. More girls, more clients, more special parties where multiple men would book a hotel suite for the night. I was his premium offering, experienced but still young enough, reliable, broken in. I'd learned to disappear inside myself during those years, to float somewhere near the ceiling, looking down at my body like it belonged to someone else. I became so good at it that sometimes I'd have trouble coming back. Hours would pass, and I'd find myself somewhere with no memory of how I got there. There was a younger girl in the house, Tracy. Just turned 18, fresh-faced. Still believed Jermaine's promises about modeling contracts and music video auditions. Reminded me of myself. One night, Jermaine beat her so badly she couldn't work for a week. Her offense? Taking too long to get ready. While I was cleaning her wounds in the bathroom, the one place without cameras, she whispered, "Does it ever get better?" I had no answer. That night, I caught my oldest daughter, then 6, putting on my makeup. Standing on a stool in front of the mirror in thigh-high boots that swallowed her little legs. "I'm practicing for when I grow up," she said innocently. "Daddy says I'll be even prettier than you. He says I'll make lots of money someday." Something inside me, something I thought had died long ago, suddenly screamed. I'd endured everything he'd done to me. But my daughter, my son, the twins, all my children? No. This ended with me. The next day, I started skimming money. A little from each client. $5 here, 10 there, hidden in diapers, in baby formula containers, taped under the bathroom sink. When I could, I'd volunteer to make the grocery runs, always with one of Jermaine's boys watching, but they didn't see me buying $40 worth of groceries and getting $60 in cash back, pocketing the difference. For 8 months, I gathered crumbs of freedom while planning our escape. I started losing weight, so I could ask for new clothes I could pack in a bag and hide in the crawl space. I began casually mentioning how Marcus's medication made him sleepy at night, setting up the expectation that all my children would be sound asleep by 9. I made sure to accidentally leave the gas tank empty in Jermaine's second car once, just to confirm my suspicion that the spare key was kept in the magnetized box under the rear bumper. What Jermaine never realized was that I wasn't just his victim, I was his student. I'd learned manipulation from the master himself. I'd learned patience. I'd learned to smile while plotting. And I'd learned that sometimes, survival means becoming someone you never thought you could be. The night I decided would be our last, I served him his favorite meal, smiled more than usual, let him think he'd finally broken me completely, put something special in his drink, something I'd been collecting from one of the girls whose client liked her relaxed. I watched him eat, watched him drink, watched his eyes grow heavy as he sprawled on the couch, remote in hand. I kissed his forehead as his eyes closed. The police report later said he had enough sedatives in his system to tranquilize a horse. 3 a.m., 6 sleepy children, 2 backpacks, 1 burner phone I'd bought with skimmed money and kept charged in a hollowed-out teddy bear. My hands shook so badly I could barely dial. 7 digits I'd repeated to myself like a mantra for years. I called the number I'd memorized years before. Didn't even know if it still worked. But someone answered. Someone came. Her name was Diane, the social worker from the hospital. She remembered me. Brought 2 cars, one for her, one for another woman from the shelter. We divided the children between the vehicles, left Jermaine breathing heavily on the couch, surrounded by empty beer bottles to support the story that he'd just passed out drunk. We drove for 6 hours. No headlights for the first 30 minutes, taking back roads. My children asking questions I couldn't answer yet. Zoe, the oldest, holding my hand so tight her little nails left half-moons in my palm. We were moved to a shelter 3 counties away, given new names, new paperwork, then to transitional housing in another state. I slept with a chair against the door for the first 6 months, jumped at every sound, checked under the car each morning for tracking devices, taught my children never to mention their real names or where we came from. I kept waiting for him to find us. Jermaine had connections, police, judges, business owners, eyes everywhere, men who owed him favors, men who'd paid for me and my girls, men who knew what we looked like. Every time a car slowed near our apartment, I'd feel my heart try to escape through my throat. 9 months into our new life, my oldest son spotted a man watching our apartment from across the street. "That's Uncle Ray," he whispered to me, referring to one of Jermaine's enforcers. We moved again the next day. New city, new names, starting over from nothing. Then came the call. 13 months after our escape. Diane's voice, cautious but firm. "Tasha, I need to tell you something. Jermaine was found in an alley behind his favorite bar last night. Multiple gunshot wounds. No suspects. He's gone." I'd like to say I felt relief. Or justice. But what I felt was emptier than either of those things. Because even dead, he still had his hands around my throat. Even dead, I still flinched at shadows. Even dead, I wondered if somehow he'd arranged it. Just another manipulation to lure me into letting my guard down. The most terrifying thought wasn't that he might still be alive. It was that parts of him still lived inside me. For weeks after the news, I'd find myself automatically counting cash at the end of the day that I didn't need to hand over. I'd wake up in a panic at 2 a.m., thinking I'd missed his call. I'd stand in the shower until the water ran cold, trying to wash away phantom fingerprints. The habits of captivity are etched deeper than we know. And my children? They asked about him. Missed him. Especially the younger ones who only knew he'd brought them toys sometimes. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that the monster in your story was the prince in theirs? Recovery doesn't happen in a straight line. There are good days that make you believe in second chances. Days when you look at your children playing freely in a park and think, maybe, just maybe, they won't remember the before times. And there are days when you find yourself automatically counting out money that doesn't need to be handed over, or flinching when someone raises their voice, or checking the locks 4, 5, 6 times. Days when a certain cologne on a passing stranger sends you into a bathroom stall to vomit. Days when you can't bear to be touched, even by your children. My children had nightmares. So did I. Marcus's seizures got worse before they got better. Zoe started wetting the bed at 8 years old. The twins developed a secret language only they understood, their own defense mechanism. Liam barely spoke until he was 5. Desiree, my youngest, had attachment issues so severe she'd scream if I left her sight. We all went to therapy, together, separately. We learned new words for what had happened to us. Words like trafficking, exploitation, coercive control, post-traumatic stress. We also learned words like resilience, boundaries, healing, safety planning. I got my GED, then an associate's degree in social work. I started working at a nonprofit, just answering phones at first, then sharing my story with others, then training police officers and healthcare workers on how to recognize victims like I had been. The world looks different now, at 30. I see the signs I couldn't see before. I recognize the grooming, the isolation, the slow erosion of self. I notice when a young girl has a much older boyfriend who speaks for her at appointments. I catch the cover stories that don't quite add up. The bruises hidden under makeup. The way some women scan a room, looking for exits, for danger, for approval. The way I used to. And I point these things out to my children, especially my daughters, like landmines we've learned to navigate around. Red flags aren't decorations, I tell Zoe, now 13, when she mentions a friend whose boyfriend checks her phone. They're warnings. Our apartment isn't fancy, but it's ours. 6 children in 3 bedrooms makes for chaos, but it's our chaos. No one tells us when to speak or what to wear or who deserves our time. No one's love comes with a price tag attached. Marcus's seizures are controlled with medication. The twins are thriving in school. Ayana wants to be a doctor, Andre a chef. Liam still struggles with anxiety, but is passionate about drawing and spends hours creating elaborate worlds on paper. Desiree, my baby, now 8, has her father's charm, but none of his cruelty. She makes friends wherever she goes. And Zoe, my firstborn, my fellow survivor, watches me with eyes that understand too much, yet somehow haven't lost their light. You saved us, she told me recently, as we folded laundry together. As if I were some kind of hero, and not just a woman who took too long to find her way out. The truth that keeps me awake some nights is this. I don't know if I would have found the courage to leave if I hadn't seen the danger spreading toward my children. My love for them was stronger than my fear of him, and that's the only math that matters in the end. I still have the burner phone I used that night, deactivated now, useless. But I keep it in my bedside drawer as a reminder that one call, one decision, one moment of extreme courage can change everything. 3 years after Jermaine's death, I returned to my hometown. Not to stay, just to face it. To stand in the places where I'd been diminished and look at them through my new eyes. The corner store where we'd met was now a laundromat. The apartment where he'd kept us was condemned, slated for demolition to make way for luxury condos. The streets where I'd walked with downcast eyes were just streets, no magical power to pull me back into the past. I drove past my old elementary school, past the projects where I grew up, past the motel where I'd worked most nights. Each place a bead on the rosary of my former life. But the prayers they inspired now were ones of thanksgiving for escape, not pleas for rescue. I visited my mother's grave. She'd died of liver failure while I was gone. We'd never reconciled. I'd never even told her about her grandchildren. Some wounds don't get that kind of closure. I left flowers anyway. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement that her brokenness had shaped mine, and that I was now reshaping it into something else entirely. As I stood there, a text came through on my phone. A picture from my oldest son. He'd aced his math test. First A ever, the message said. Ordinary miracle, extraordinary gift. That night, in the hotel room, I wept for the first time in years. Not from pain or fear, but from the strange relief of realizing the past was finally just that, past. It could no longer reach forward and pull me back. People ask me sometimes how I can talk about what happened to me without falling apart. The truth is, I do fall apart sometimes. In private, in therapy. In moments when grief ambushes me, like when I realized I don't have baby pictures of my first 4 children, or when Zoe asked me why she doesn't have a father to walk her down the aisle someday. But I've learned something about brokenness. About how the human spirit, like the Japanese art of kintsugi, can be repaired with gold in the cracks. How telling my story helps seal those fractures with purpose. I work now with girls like I once was. Girls with old eyes and young faces. Girls who believe that attention is the same as love. Girls whose homes are battlegrounds or graveyards. I recognize the hunger in them because I once starved with it. Last month, a 14-year-old came into our center. Bruised wrist partially hidden by bracelets. Designer purse but discount store sneakers. A boyfriend waiting outside who looked twice her age. I saw myself in her like looking into a time mirror. She wouldn't talk at first, wouldn't meet my eyes. But as I told her bits of my story, I watched her shoulders relax slightly. Watched her glance at the door less frantically. When she left, she took the card with our hotline number. 3 days later, she called. Now she's safe. Now she's starting over. Now the cycle is broken for one more child. My name is Tasha. I was groomed, trafficked, and exploited from age 17 to 27. I am a survivor, a mother, an advocate. I am the author of my own life now. My children will never know the desperation I knew, never believe that their bodies are currency, never think that love and pain are the same thing. This is my victory. The most dangerous predators know how to spot the wounded, but the wounded, once healed, know how to spot the predators. And that knowledge, that terrible, precious knowledge, is how we break the cycle. One story, one warning, one saved life at a time. The light I was looking for was inside me all along. It just took walking through the darkest shadows to find it. And now I hold that light up for others still finding their way out of the dark. Because the greatest revenge against those who tried to destroy us isn't hate. It's living well. It's loving freely. It's standing in sunshine with our faces turned up to the warmth, no longer afraid of being seen.